Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Commander Campaign. Today we're going to talk Star Wars. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Commander Campaign. It's Mike. I'm bringing a short episode here to you today. We're going to be talking about Star Wars, and this channel is all about building decks around television shows, movies, anime, books, magic lore, and anything else really, any type of story. It's a Vorthos DDH podcast, and yeah, let's get right into it. This episode is talking about Star Wars, but so most of the time I've been making decks around the protagonists so far in my previous episodes, but today we're going to talk about the dark side, the Emperor, Darth Vader, the Stormtroopers. Welcome to Bolas the Ravager. 1 blue, black, red for a legendary creature, Elder Dragon 4/4 with flying. When Bolas the Ravager enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. You can pay 4 and Grixis, a blue, black, and a red, to exile Bolas the Ravager, then return him to the battlefield under your control, transformed. Activate this ability only any time you could cast a sorcery. Notably, so it brings it under its owner's control. So if your opponent takes control of this and activates the ability, it'll actually come back under your control, interestingly enough. So its flip side has 7 loyalty. You can +2 to draw 2 cards. You can -3, and Bolas the Arisen deals 10 damage to target creature or planeswalker. -4, put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Or -12, exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. So this is the Emperor. Why is it the Emperor? Well, think about it. It's Bolas, probably the most iconic evil individual in Magic, and he is tried to basically control Ravnica and control all the planeswalkers and kill and basically eradicate and kill them all. And yeah, so that I couldn't think of anything more appropriate. And we'll also talk about some of the lead characters in the deck. So we have Anakin, who is being represented by 2 different creatures. Two different planeswalkers, actually. The first one starts off as a creature. It's Liliana, Heretical Healer. 1 black for a legendary creature, Human Cleric, 2/3 with lifelink. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile Liliana, Heretical Healer, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. When she's transformed, she starts with 3 loyalty. She's Liliana, Defiant Necromancer. You can +2, each player discards a card. You can -X to return target non-legendary creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Or you can -8. You get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. So that ultimate, as well as all the ultimates of all the planeswalkers in this deck, are not out of reach because we are running cards like the Chainveil. So this is only one instance of our Darth Vader Anakin character. Why is it Darth Vader? Well, because Liliana was turned against the rest of the planeswalkers by Bolas. And Bolas is the Emperor who basically turns Anakin to the dark side. We also have a plethora of other Lilianas in this deck that all do the same thing. The reason this episode is going to be so short is because there are so many Lilianas, and there's so many of something else that we'll talk about later. So the next card that represents Darth Vader is his machine. The machine part of him, anyway, is Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. 2 blue and a black for a legendary planeswalker Tezzeret with 3 loyalty. You can +1 to look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Or you can -1 to give target artifact becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 5/5. You can also -4, target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is twice the number of artifacts you control. So, Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, you can see how that makes sense. He was Tezzeret the Seeker initially, and he's converted into an Agent of Bolas as soon as he was given the means to become the evil Tezzeret that he is. And imbued with machinery, I thought it made a lot of sense for him to be Darth Vader, who is basically half man, half machine at this point. This card's actually not too bad because you can build it up fairly quickly and you can protect it with a lot of the cards you have going in this deck. And you can get some of the most powerful cards in your deck with him, like the Bolas Citadel, which we'll talk about later, or maybe even the Aetherflux Reservoir, or anything like that. So, now let's move on to the other half of the meat of the deck. So there's a lot of this effect in this deck. But we're going to talk about the main one. Clone, the original one. 3 and a blue for a creature shapeshifter 0/0. You may have Clone enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Creatures like Clone in this deck, you got Mirror Image, you got Evil Twin. They're doing very similar things. So the Stormtrooper army were originally clones, and then they became Stormtroopers once their purpose was redirected. So there are quite a few clones in this deck. As you can imagine, there's quite a few clone effects in Magic. And with them, you're going to be able to have plenty of the best creatures on the battlefield, and they're going to be able to defend your Planeswalkers quite nicely. Similarly, we have Clone Legion for 7 blue. It's a sorcery. For each creature target player controls, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So you make an entire clone army with this thing. Very powerful, very, very strong. And yeah, you're going to use these creatures to attack, to defend. This is one of the more swingy cards in the deck because it can do nothing if somebody just board wipes, or it can win you the game in some instances. So yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Now let's talk about the 3 cards that represent the Death Star. First, you have Aetherflux Reservoir, then you have Oblivion Stone, and Lux Cannon. So Aetherflux Reservoir is a 4 CMC artifact with whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. You can pay 50 life, and Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. Why is this the Death Star? Well, basically, you can nuke anything with this thing. You can gain a lot of life very, very quickly with this card. This card is it's a house in Commander. This card's insane. You saw it in some of my previous deck decks, at least one of them the Kingsman one, and this thing is just so incredibly powerful. If people resolve this card, you need to destroy it and get it off the battlefield at all costs, because this card is a game ender and a perfect representation for the Death Star. We also have the Oblivion Stone. It's 3 mana for an artifact. You can tap 4 and tap it, or pay 4 and tap it to put a fate counter on target permanent. You can pay 5 and tap it, sacrifice Oblivion Stone, destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter on it, then remove all fate counters from all permanents. So why is this a Death Star? Well, it's an Oblivion Stone. So a stone in the same shape of a star, on the same shape of the Death Star, that is going to wreak oblivion on whatever it wants. And it can, over some time, protect some of your other stuff if you really needed to. But this card is a board wipe, it works in the deck, and it makes a lot of sense here. Now let's talk about Lux Cannon. It's 4 mana for a artifact. You can tap it to put a charge counter onto Lux Cannon, or you can tap it to remove 3 charge counters from Lux Cannon to destroy target permanent. So the The Death Star is charging up, and once it is fully charged, it can completely decimate any individual target. Makes a lot of sense. Not incredibly powerful. We don't really have any proliferate in this deck. You can add some if you really want to. I just thought it was a last minute include from a friend that suggested it. Next, we have Bolas Citadel, 3 black, black, black for a legendary artifact. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. You can tap 10 and sacrifice 10 non-land permanent, and each opponent loses 10 life. So this is supposed to be the secret order of the Emperor in Imperial City. It's the headquarters for the Emperor. And this card is really, really powerful. You can play a lot of cards off the top of your deck, and if you get lucky and don't keep hitting lands, you can just churn out spell after spell after spell. Now, you have to be wary of your life total, but if you do it in a way that you play, say you have 11 mana, and you just want to try to win the game. You play Bolas Citadel, you play as many cards off the top of your deck as you can, get yourself down to as low of a life total, because it doesn't really matter. Then play Deep Glow Skate, doubling all of the counters on all of your planeswalkers. Or maybe you just spell, 50, 50, 50 with Aetherflux Reservoir. This card can be really nuts. It can also bring you to the brink of death. So you got to be very, very careful when you play with this card. But this card is really powerful. When it's powerful, it ends games. So, yeah. So, let us move on to the depictors of the Force in the deck. So, there are a couple of them. You will see them in the deck description, but we're going to talk about 2 of them. We have Channeled Force, 2 blue-red for a instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, discard X cards. Target player draws X cards. Channeled Force deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. So this card's very, it's very good for restocking your hand if you need to. There's going to be times where you don't like what you have in your hand and you want to refill, or there's going to be times where you can use one of your many planeswalkers that reanimate creatures, and you want to put those cards into the graveyard so that you can reanimate them with those planeswalkers. That's a nice little combo with this. Plus, it's also a removal spell. Plus, it would also defix the Force. Then we also have Force of Negation, which is basically Force Shield. 1 blue for an instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. And you can counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to its owner's graveyard. Great at getting rid of problematic cards in people's decks because it does exile them when you counter it. Very powerful, and they're not going to necessarily see it coming because you can just discard a card and cast this even for completely free. So, not bad. Then you have the Jedi Mind Trick with Mass Manipulation. XX, blue for a sorcery. Gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So you're going to trick them into doing your bidding. Very powerful card. Makes a lot of sense in this deck. Moving on. Next, we have the 2 cards that are going to depict the destruction of the Jedi Academy on Coruscant by Anakin when he turns evil. So you have Hour of Devastation and you have Blasphemous Act. Hour of Devastation is 3 red for a sorcery. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn, and Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-Bolas planeswalker. Good board wipe, and will keep your Nicol Bolas alive. So then we have Blasphemous Act. It's 8 in a red for a sorcery. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and Blasphemous Act deals 13 damage to each creature. Very good at clearing out most boards. Very interesting damage-based board wipe. We are in black, so we could play some of the other more powerful ones, but I thought this one made a lot more sense with what we're going for. Be careful with Hour of Devastation, because you are running a lot of planeswalkers, some of which are not Bolas planeswalkers. So be mindful, don't destroy your own planeswalkers unless you know why, unless you know that you have to do it. So then we have the final card in the deck, or the final story-based card in the deck. We have Fatal Push for a black. It's an instant, destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less. It also has a Revolt, destroy that creature if it has converted mana cost 4 or less instead of a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. So this is when the Emperor falls to his death in the 6th movie. And it's also a kill spell, and it's pretty efficient at 1 mana. It can take care of a lot of pesky hate bear type creatures in Commander, which a lot of them are roaming around. It can kill a Thrasios, which is we all know is a very, very powerful card. So let's move on to the strategy of this deck, shall we? So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to flood the board with as many powerful creatures due to the amount of clones that you have. So you're just basically going to see what your opponents are playing. You're going to match what they're playing to protect your planeswalkers. You're going to play your planeswalkers and outgrind your opponents because you're going to have the best creatures on the board in theory, because you're going to have access to whatever your opponents have access to, which is usually enough to deter them from attacking your planeswalkers. Now, if they board wipe, now you're really in the driver's seat, because now your planeswalkers can reign free. They don't, unless they play a creature with haste, they can activate for probably 1 or 2 more turns before they get targeted again, which is very nice. Then you can use the Chain Veil to just completely eviscerate your opponents, because if you can get 2 or 3 ultimates off in a game, you're probably going to win. So now the strengths of this deck are planeswalkers can take over a game. We all know that. And you're also playing with the best creatures on the board, as I talked about before. You have so many clones that you should always have access to the most powerful creature on the board at any given time. That being said, this deck has some weaknesses. First of all, if you don't have a strong defense, planeswalkers are going to be targeted pretty much 100% of the time when people go to attack. And yeah, any opportunity that presents itself is going to mean that your planeswalkers are going to die, and if you don't get enough value out of them before that happens, you're going to lose the game. If you can't defend them and you didn't refill your hand to a point that you can still play the game, your opponents are just going to walk all over you. They already were targeting you because they were targeting your planeswalkers, so they figure, might as well not make anybody else upset, so they're going to continue attacking you. And that can lead to you losing the game. So if you're in a situation where your planeswalkers are out there, you don't have any creatures, you need to make deals. You need to make sure that people are not going to attack your planeswalkers. Use the whole, I don't plan on ulting anytime soon, so they're not really a threat, but this person is a threat. So I need you to attack them, or it's in your best interest to attack them. That is your best way to deal with it if you do not have a board of all your clone Stormtrooper army to defend them. That's your best way. If you guys like the deck, like, comment, subscribe below, and let me know what you think. Peace out, guys. I'll catch you next time.